All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Looks like I still have my chat boxes up, so you might hear a little ding-a-ling every once in a while. Excited and grateful to have everyone participate with us today. That might be annoying. We have a great conversation that's gonna be taking place today. So grateful that we're having Kathy and Brandon and Genevieve join us. Thank you so much. We're going to be exploring and discussing, BIPOC joy and creating representation in the outdoors. And I get the opportunity to introduce Kathy as our mediator. My name is Eli, and I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Gnarly Nutrition. It's a delight to be able to have Kathy moderating this conversation for us. Kathy is a writer, advocate, and an unprofessional climber. She is the executive director of the No Man's Land Film Festival, based out of the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and a regular columnist for Climbing Magazine. Along with cultivating a deep love for exploring the vastness of the planet from a rock climbing lens, she also has an affection for sharing donuts with strangers. As a podcast producer for The Love of Climbing, which many of you may know her from, she's wanted to create a storytelling platform that heartened and strengthened the community. Climbing is mostly jumping for her, as she has a negative index. Thank you, Kathy. While she and I have never sat across from each other and shared a donut, which I hope that next time you through Salt Lake, we can make that happen. Donuts and whiskey, I think, or something like that. Good combo. We have had a number of conversations, and like probably many of you have gotten to know Kathy through her podcast For the Love of Climbing, and you know that she has a great ability to be able to approach delicate conversations and bring topics to the forefront of our minds that also break our hearts, right? So that's one of the things that I have definitely grown to love about Kathy. So really grateful that she's here to help us kind of have this conversation. Also, as I've gotten the privilege to get to know Brandon and Genevieve a little bit more, one of the things that I love about both of them is that they have a huge love for their sport, climbing, and we see that in kind of their everyday lives, but they also have a huge love for their community. So really, really grateful to have all three of them having this conversation with us today. I wanted to just give everybody a heads up that there is a place that you can ask questions, and you're more than welcome to ask them throughout the conversation while there's a topic happening. Kathy will most likely wait towards the end to bring those questions, if appropriate, bring them up in the conversation. So thanks again for everyone joining, and I'm gonna just kind of melt and disperse into the background.
Thank you so much, Eli. Wow, what an introduction. I feel like I don't need to say anything else. But I would like to introduce everybody to Brandon Belcher and Genevieve Walker tonight. I'm honored to be sitting here with both of you. Genevieve Walker, she brings a fresh perspective to the climbing community in a much needed time. And she's also a certified climbing instructor and currently lives on the road. And Genevieve, I know we just saw each other recently in the Red, but can you give us all a quick update about where you are in your life, just currently?
Yeah, so I'm still in the Red, still dealing with the rain, trying to climb when I can get out, and I'm still figuring life out. I feel like we all are. Some of us might have a head on their shoulders, but I'm still figuring it out. And yeah, that's about it. Currently dealing with a little bit of a knee injury that just happened yesterday, so I'm a little bummed about that, but we'll see. I'm giving it like a week or two, and then it should be good.
Have you gotten anything amazing in the red that you're like extraordinarily proud of right now, or?
I'm just trying to get red strong again. It's
Yeah,
taken a while.
that's like a 2 week long process, I feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely had my ego crushed a little bit, which has been good. I've been humbled.
Welcome back to the red. I also wanted to mention that I heard that you like to slackline, and I wanted to ask you, what is that all about?
Oh my God, yes. I'm not that good, but it's just something else I like to do in my off time. It's something I can like drink a beer and chill outside and do. I started doing it when I like traveled to Southeast Asia for the first time. And I've just kind of hooked ever since. It's a really good community of people too. I've kind of met throughout the years. So I feel like again, it's just another community that's kind of like sucked me in.
Awesome. I love it. Well, if we're ever in the same latitude and longitude again, hopefully you can show me how to not fall off. Um, I'm also honored to introduce Brandon, who is a climber based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And he's passionate about using his voice for social justice and creating a space for more BIPOC in the climbing community. And if there is anybody who can name the top 5 best places to get Korean food in Atlanta, he's definitely your guy. So thanks for being here tonight, Brandon. Can you also give us a quick life update? What's going on with you right now? I know that we got to spend a little bit of time this summer in Wyoming, which was so awesome. But then you came back to Colorado, right? You came back out west for a bouldering trip. How was that?
Yeah, it was great. I kind of just like romped around all over Colorado for like 2 weeks and got to check out Crested Butte and Guanella Pass, Rocky Mountain, Morrison, like all these different just like various crags and stuff like that, and got to get a really nice like intricate sort of like climbing introduction to the state. But I didn't go to Rifle though. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, it was excellent. I had like a really good time out there. We got to hang out for a little bit, and then we got sushi that one night, which was good to see you. And yeah, just huh?
We ate so much sushi that night.
Oh yeah, it was actually really impressive. I was very happy about that. Definitely a highlight of the trip, and yeah, just kind of just got a nice little grand tour just from various people hosting me. We were very gracious, grateful for, and yeah, ever since then, I've been back at home, kind of like back doing the work from home thing. This is like my kind of office. I'm sitting at my work desk right now. And yeah, I've just been working from home, climbing a little bit. The weather's been kind of spotty. So I've been enjoying kind of just like hang out with my cats and ride my bike a little bit and just kind of getting back to normal, whatever that means. So yeah, that's what I've been up to since I've been back in Colorado.
Is it still raining? Is it raining a lot there too?
We had a really bad thunderstorm on Saturday, and then Sunday was kind of a wash. And then I think it's supposed to rain tomorrow and Thursday. So I wanted to go out on Friday, but I think it's still going to be too wet. Like the area that I'm going to, especially over at Middle Creek, I think will still be kind of mank. So I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
I don't know if any of you guys will agree with me on this, but I feel like being on the East Coast and having it rain, like the rainstorms on the East Coast are just so different from being out west. It's just, I missed it. Is that weird?
Kind of.
I mean there's the whole part where you don't get to climb, but yeah, I don't know. I really think the rainstorms out here are kind of magical. But
yeah, they're really dope. They're really just powerful. And they're cool. Like you can sit on your porch and just kind of listen to the rain and thunder and stuff. But yeah, it does kind of ruin the climbing season sometimes.
Or stress day. Well, again, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us tonight and giving us some of your thoughts and perspectives. And again, we will be taking questions at the end of this, so feel free to drop them into the little Q&A box. And so tonight's discussion is surrounding BIPOC joy. and representation in the outdoors. And so diving in, we want to open up the conversation with the really easy, totally simple and not loaded topic of sexism. And I think that, that's something that often gets presented as a women's issue. And we all know in actuality that it's not. And, if we can just promote more healthy conversations that kind of undefine masculinity, things like gender equity can, just accelerate with more engaged people, men and women, in the effort. And so to start, Genevieve, can you speak to this in your experience? How prevalent is sexism in climbing, in the outdoor industry currently? Like, how have you experienced this personally?
Yeah, and I'm only going off of like my experience, which is only one small bit, but I still think it's like super prevalent in many different ways. One, it's just like the expectations that people place on females in the climbing community, like that we're not going to be as strong, or that we're just there to like belay our partners, or we're always going to be like top roping, or expecting us to look a certain way and still have these strengths. So that's kind of like my experience with it. Especially when I first started climbing and I was kind of trying to figure out like what it means to be a climber as a female. Like, what do I need to look like? How do I need to act? Like, it's hard. It's really hard. I thought I had to dress a certain way. I went in like all through school, like I loved wearing makeup, loved it. I didn't thought like that was okay. And when I started getting into climbing, I would be around these females who were just like no makeup, like super raw, kind of like tomboyish. And I thought like that's the avenue that I would have to take if I wanted to be quote unquote of a climber. So I kind of went that route for many years. And it really wasn't until like this last year where I'm kind of like, I don't know if I can curse, but like, fuck this. Like, like that's not me. I should be able to be comfortable being who I am and still be seen as a climber. I shouldn't have to be proving myself at this point. I've been climbing for 8 years now, and I still feel like I'm constantly proving myself as a climber to everybody in the community, especially when I'm at the crag with other men around who just expect that I'm not climbing the same grades that they are, or projecting the same things that they are, or maybe like on-siting the things that they're projecting. Like, I don't know. I do think it's like super prevalent though. And I think there still needs to just be a lot of work around that. Again, it's just these expectations that people have that need to be kind of squashed. And maybe these conversations are definitely helping, but I think maybe more needs to happen. I'm not sure where we can go with that, but like this just isn't enough. When is it ever enough, I don't know.
Well, I mean, and taking that conversation and then moving into action, right? Like that, it is really hard to get from one point to the next, but I do appreciate so much how you are just kind of redefining the whole idea of femininity in the sport. And Brandon, I know that, so this past March for the No Man's Land Film Festival, you came out and you were able to speak on, it was our first men's panel discussion that we'd had in a while, and I was super excited to have you and 3 other guests come and speak. And I just love to hear some of your thoughts. Currently, like where do you kind of like lie on this topic?
I mean, yeah, I definitely would have to agree with Genevieve that there seems to be just like a different perception of women within the sport. Especially when compared to like reality. Like climbing is one of the rare sports where like women and men are like regularly like achieving like these same like goals and these same benchmarks, like, or like at least like very close to it. But still like the overall perception of women in the sport, I would say, is not like the most positive or like the strongest, that's for sure. And it's a bit weird, or not weird, but for me, the way that I came into climbing, I think the Southeast area, there are a lot of women who climb for themselves. They climb to achieve goals, and like they climb because they enjoy it. And there were a lot of them, and a lot of them were like very strong, very capable, very knowledgeable, like climbers. And so, when the issue of sexism, when then the community first came out, I was like, damn, like I know like a ton of women who climb in the Southeast, and a ton of women who live in chat and like crush. And I think it was until I started like listening to more like someone like Melissa Edwards' experiences, Kathy, your experiences, Genevieve, your experiences, that I started to like kind of like open my eyes a bit more into my own like implicit biases that I may have had towards women in the gym or at the crag or something like that. Just like maybe something that I'm just like subconsciously thinking of, where I'm like surprised to see a woman climbing like a hard 13. But like, why is that? Because women do that all the time in the sport. So yeah, I guess I've just been trying to do a lot more listening on the subject, and just like learning and trying to like check myself, and just be cognizant of maybe certain like languages, of like certain words or phrases that I'm using, like like nut up and stuff like that. Just trying to avoid like these really kind of classic toxic sort of behaviors that we might not necessarily like pick up on initially. So, but yeah, I've been trying to just do a lot more listening and a lot more just internalizing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you
It's
for
like 2020. I was saying it's like 2020 by now. Like, how many years have you seen like women crushing? It like shouldn't be that big of a surprise. For some reason, it still is. Like, I go to the crag and guys still just like drop their ropes down as I'm like lowering Scott, not even asking if I'm gonna climb and just assuming that like I'm not climbing it. Like, I don't know. I used to be real quiet, and now I'm just kind of a total bitch at the crags. I don't think it's cool. Like, I'll let you like put your shoes on. You can get tied in. I'm not gonna say shit. But then right when he gets down and you think you're gonna start climbing, like I'm like, sorry you had to wait 45 minutes, but I'm also climbing this. That was your fault for not asking. Like, it's 2020. Get over it. I don't know. It's just frustrating to have to still deal with that. And it's just like the whole like look for women. Like, you want us to be strong, you want us to be beautiful, but like naturally beautiful. Like, you have these such high expectations for us for all these different things, like that is just like unattainable, right? But that's what you see like in magazines or whatever, and it's like, that's just not okay. Like, for me, when I first got into climbing, like I didn't really have anybody that like looked like me to kind of like look up to. So I just felt like I had to change everything about myself to fit in. And like, that's what needs to change too. We do need to see more like representation. We need to see people of all different age, sizes, colors out there crushing it, because they're out there. I went to Color the Crag. There are a lot of crushers out there, beautiful crushers out there, doing shit, and like they just need to be seen. Yeah. And not just this year, like 5, 10 years, 20 years. Like, we need to constantly keep being seen.
Yeah, create that standard. Yeah, and thank you for being somebody who is leading the way for so many people. And Brandon, I wanted to say thank you for emphasizing so much that like as a male, as like our male counterpart, listening is learning, because I think that kind of gets lost on a lot of people. But another important issue in this discussion tonight is racism in the outdoors. And I'm curious to know, what are some recognizable examples of this that you're seeing still to this day versus something more covert, like covert racism?
I guess, well, just even over the summer, like spending a lot of time in climbing areas that are usually in very small or rural, like mountain towns with not a lot of diversity. And I try to give my business to the local community. But sometimes it's hard when you step into these small towns and you just get these constant stares all the time. And whereas like your friends don't think anything of it, like your white friends don't think any of it, but for you, for me at least, like it gets really uncomfortable. And to like be in these places for weeks on end or a month or two on end, like it's just something that I try to make my other friends aware, because sometimes when I do express my like uncomfortableness, like I have had friends like not tell me that I'm sensitive, but almost like disregard my emotions and feelings and make me feel like it's not a thing. Like, oh, like no, like, you know, his stare isn't, he doesn't really mean that. What he's saying isn't, he's just trying to be nice or things like that. And it's like, well, his mannerisms aren't aimed at you, so of course you're not going to feel that way. But just because you're not feeling it doesn't mean it's happening. And I really wish you would just listen to me and acknowledge like my experience that I'm having right now, instead of thinking that I'm just being sensitive. And that's just like one example for me, just like, you know, being in these areas for like prolonged periods of time. Or even like right now, I'm in the red, and there's been times where I want to go out to like do trivia or things. And like last week, I went out to trivia. I got there a little bit early to get a spot, and like there's like a group of like older white locals who like literally just stared me down. Like 4 of these guys just gave me like this evil stare, and I'm like staring at them, and they're staring at me, and I'm just like, hey. They didn't say anything. And just little things like that, like, okay, maybe they didn't, you know, call me a name or be like really rude, but it's all these like little things that eventually like add up in my eyes. People always ask me like, oh, like what are like these like big overt like racist things that you've experienced? It's like, it's not always these like overt things. Sometimes it's smaller things that just like kind of add up, and you have to kind of internalize that and deal with that. And eventually, I don't know, for me at least, eventually I just snap, and I like just can't. It's the stress just, I can't handle it. And all those little things are also traumatizing. It's not always these big things. Sometimes it's all the little things as well. And I don't think people really think about that.
Yeah. The little things definitely add up. And I think it's also, you know, important to recognize that little things like that can escalate in real life, and we don't always see it. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen, and it does happen. And so I think that those are really valid feelings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Or even just being like labeled like the Black person that climbed up the crag. I got that when I like was in the Northeast. It's like, hey, I have a fucking name. My name's Genevieve, you know. Yeah, I might be the only Black person that climbs in that area, but like call me by my name. Just like little things like that, really. Like to them, it might not be a lot, but for me, at least, like I think it's still an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that frustration. Brandon, do you have anything similar you feel like you've experienced?
Yeah, I think anytime I'm really in an area like Slade or for instance like Tin Sleep earlier this summer, like it definitely becomes pretty I've become like extremely aware of like the environment that I'm in and the situation that I'm in. Because I mean, I think I made that post where there's some dude at this like random town like concert over in Tin Sleep, and he was just like, he looked so perplexed at my general existence. And so, you know, I'm thinking, you know, their town isn't very diverse, obviously, but if there's so much climbing traffic coming in and so much climbing tourism that's coming in, you know, it shouldn't be shocking to a person, to like these two locals, to see like a Black person in their town if the climbing community were to be more representative of like the actual population of the United States. If there are more Black and brown people who were in the community who like would actually travel through those areas and stuff like that. So yeah, I know it's just like stuff like that. Like that's just very, not necessarily eye-opening, because I do know that this community is like very insular, but it's just like a really harsh reminder. You know, you go to like your standard like little league baseball tournament or like a basketball tournament or something like that, and no one's going to be shocked to see Black and brown people, like because you know, they're in the sports, they're doing those things. But, you know, climbing, it's just so insular. I don't know, I feel like I'm ranting, but just, you know, if climbing was just a little bit more representative and people were getting out there, like going to places like Tin Sleep, you know, maybe that local wouldn't look so perplexed, you know. And so I don't know, I've started to just kind of like peel back and just like kind of like unlayer a lot of things in my mind as far as like, why am I having like these general interactions with people in this context? And it's like, you know, it's the surrounding areas themselves that I'm in, but also it's the community that I'm a part of that brings me to these areas that also is like not very diverse or like extremely insular. So it just all kind of like, it all just kind of like adds up into like these kind of weird experiences. Like, you know, if more Black and brown people were going to slave because of climbing, then like locals probably wouldn't be that freaked out eventually. You know, they're going to get used to it, or at least they're going to tolerate things. But yeah.
Yeah. From what you've both shared, I mean, it's pretty obvious that racial and gender discrimination can make you and anybody feel unwelcome when they're participating in, you know, not just climbing, but just the outdoors in general. So how do you deal with this, Genevieve? I know that you kind of like talked about just like kind of flipping the switch and like you've changed your whole attitude and like you show up and you take up that space both physically and verbally, which I think is amazing. And what are some other ways to kind of combat this, do you think?
I don't know. I feel like I'm still trying to figure it out myself because I'm not always so vocal. Like it really depends on the context and like who I'm with. Like there are times when it's just me and I just kind of retreat into myself because I don't feel comfortable speaking up or giving somebody the eye. So I don't know. I just want, I guess, the people in my small circle of like climber friends to be more aware of it, because like I said, when I do express that like I'm uncomfortable and like, hey, kind of don't want to be at this bar right now, like I'd rather just leave, like just accept that for what that is and leave with me instead of like asking why and telling me that like, you know, how I'm feeling is not what's going on. Things like that. Also, I think people just need to be more aware of like there are a lot of Black and brown people that are climbing out there. Like just because I went to the gym with a few friends and somebody came up and asked like what event's going on. And I'm like, there's no event. I'm just climbing with my freaking friends. Like, why can't there be like 6 Black people at the gym just climbing? Why does it have to be some like meetup going on?
It must be POC night tonight. It's like all Black people are at the gym right now. Like, oh shit.
It's like, oh, something's going on. Is there a raffle? Like, no, yeah. There's no free pair of shoes being raffled. like things like that. It's like, it's just funny that people are still not used to seeing other people out there, you know? I don't get it. Again, it's 2020. Like, I can keep going. I can keep going.
Well, you know, here's a question. You know, just trying to put myself in someone else's shoes here and looking at it from the other way. Like for me, something that would be hugely supportive is if you are at the bar or at trivia night or at the gym and you're experiencing these things for your friends instead of gaslighting the experience. And essentially it is gaslighting. To speak up for you. Like it shouldn't, you should not always have to be in the position where you need to speak up and say yourself. Cause like you said, like sometimes you don't feel like it. Sometimes you don't feel like speaking your mind and having to self-advocate. And it is really, it's draining. It's, you know, emotional and it's fucking hard. And so, you know, just, yeah, having more empathetic friends who have your back when you just don't have it in you that day, in that moment, you know? I think that would be life-changing for some people and probably life-saving in other situations, right?
Have that support, yeah. That'd be huge. It's also hard, right? Because if you're not aware of something going on around you, like, how can I expect for you to recognize that and speak up, I guess. But I guess if I do explain and make you aware of it, that's when you should just, because I don't know. Yeah, I feel uncomfortable going places, but I still go because I'm not gonna let, a area or a group of people stop me from enjoying myself. But I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want to make the trek, especially if you work all week and you only have the weekend. Like, maybe you don't want to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Like, this is your free time. Like, you want to enjoy that time. And yeah, you love climbing, but you also don't want to have to deal with more stressors. This is the weekend. This is your time to de-stress, not have to keep stressing, So, like, yeah, I can only speak on my experience, but I also try to be aware of others out there as well.
Brendan, when it comes to introducing more of the Black community to the outdoors, such as gym climbing, what do you feel like some of the biggest barriers are right now?
I would say, of course, there's just like, it's going to be different for so many for so many people. Just like there's always context with everything that, that we do or decide not to do. But I would say like proximity is probably one of the biggest barriers, like a proximity to a gym. A lot of these gyms are like right next to a Whole Foods and like an REI and stuff like that. And those establishments aren't necessarily in predominantly like Black and brown neighborhoods. Or some of these gyms are like might be outside of like certain transit lines, or just I think it could just be like proximity to neighborhoods that Black and brown people might feel a bit more comfortable in, or that they consider home. We have one gym that's opening up in the West End that I've been helping doing some like forerunning and setting at, and it's amazing, like the number of Black and brown people who have stepped into the building just to like look at the facility and like show their excitement and stuff like that. I don't see nearly that number of like Black people especially show up at like the other gyms within town. And this is the gym that's opening up in what's been traditionally a Black neighborhood for the past like 60 years. So I think it's just like, that's just one big part of it. It's a business or like an institution like a climbing gym actually showing interest in investing in the neighborhood, right? Because I think that's one big thing. Like putting your business in the neighborhood is like you showing interest and like reaching out to them as well, just as much as it is like the customers like coming to you. So I think it's just like that gesture, if that's the right way to put it, that goes a long way within certain neighborhoods. Because for the longest time, I mean, outdoor rec companies don't open up in the West End in Atlanta. The perception of Black people in the outdoors, even in a place like Georgia, just doesn't exist, because there's no REI down there. There's no mountain store or like a bike store. I think there's a bike shop that finally opened up over there. You can't get any hiking shoes nearby or anything like that. There's no climbing gym, etc. So I would say like proximity is one big thing. And then also just, talking with, I had the very rare opportunity to climb with another Black person outside, outside of Philip Crag, and I ran into Kai Leitner and his mother over at this place called Laurel Snow. And Kai's mom kind of put it real straightforward. She was like, we're kind of in enemy territory right now. We are in predominantly, how can I put this without really alienating people too much? We're in predominantly Republican territory. And if you look at the history of the modern Republican Party, they have made it their mission to promote themselves towards individuals who have had some sort of resentment towards marginalized people. very long history with it. I've made a post about this like a while back, right after I'd left Tent Sleep. But you have these kind of contemporary conservative sort of like individuals that surround this area that support certain politics, that support certain laws, things like that. Black people are very aware of those areas. They're very aware of like the rural South or like of these rural areas being not necessarily like the safest place for them to be. And you know that, and also like we talked about proximity, they might not have an easy way to get to those areas to begin with. But you know, I would say that I was acutely aware of, you know, going up near like Dalton, Georgia, to head to Rocktown like my first time I was there, because I've heard like these horrible stories about like I have friends who are from there, and you know, they describe it as just like a lot of people who share a lot of resentment towards racial minorities, and are very overt about it. So I'm like, I think a lot of Black people are acutely aware of those areas being just can be extremely hostile and potentially dangerous. And so I think that's also another like big deterrent as well. Just like people probably don't feel safe up there, and you know we're having to stay on our toes like all the time. I have to a lot. You know, there are a lot of places I won't step into. Like Genevieve was saying, she went to trivia like the other day, and I was like, "There's no way in hell I'd do that in Slade." Like, no, I'm staying my ass at, at the campsite with my friends. You know, like I'm good. I'm just good. You know, and I have my checklist of like the main areas that I'm going to. I got my checklist. I got my gas stations off the highway. I got my like the restaurants that I'm okay eating at and stuff like that. That I know I know that I'll be fine. But besides that, I'm not really trying to like venture out to, you know, Bumblefuck barbecue spot, you know, outside of Dayton. Like I'm good. It's way too many Trump signs for me to just like step in randomly, like because I don't know what situation I'm gonna get myself into. And I'm good. Like I think we've seen I want to say over the past 6 years, but I mean, real talk, you know, the past 150 years or so, that these situations escalate or can escalate very quickly out of nowhere, and you end up dead before you even realize what the fuck is going on. From Emmett Till to George Floyd, like, you know, things can get just real sideways real quick, and you just end up dead just for looking at someone the wrong way or something. So, like, I'm good. Like, I play it safe. I try to play it safe as much as I can. So
Yeah, thank you for addressing these very real dangers and issues. And yeah, I mean, as far as barriers go, not just to climbing, but just like everyday things, right? Like things like accessibility and, you know, people's safety, people's comfort. Like these are really real things. So yeah, just being able to address them in like a really honest way. I appreciate, you know, so I've actually never heard this term before, but I feel like I've heard a lot of different versions of it over the last, you know, like 6 months here, and it's Black joy is resistance. And I wanted to ask both of you, what does that phrase mean to you? Black joy is resistance.
I don't think I've heard that quote. Black joy is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
What is that supposed to exactly mean? Resistance against what?
I guess just like the old tired narrative, you know, and just kind of how whitewashed things are. Like joy, like your joy personally, like is a form of standing up, of speaking out, of fighting back, if that makes sense. Like I said, I'd never heard of this term before either, but I feel like there's so many versions of it in the last couple of months, especially. And I just, yeah, I guess what I want to ask is like, what does joy look like to you? And in a time like this, I mean, you talked about how like, you know, being able to go climb, Genevieve, is like your time to reset and like step out. And, you know, in times like this, like when you get to express that joy through climbing, you know, what is that like for you? Like, what are you specifically getting joy from?
I think for me, the joy I get out of climbing, honestly, is like, I don't want to say the silence, but in a way, there's like a calmness that I get. Because it's just like, for me, it's almost my like meditative practice in a way, honestly. Like, I'm such an anxious, I have so much anxiety and a lot of other things that I deal with. And I think throughout my life, I've been really good. I've gotten accustomed to just kind of like always having a smile on my face and like pretend like everything's okay, because I want everybody else to feel good around me. And I like put my almost, I guess, joy kind of on the back burner for everybody else's benefit. So that, I think for me, like climbing was like my thing that kind of just like gave me this like calmness and this like quietness. Like everything else that I'm dealing with is kind of like, for me, put on the back burner, and I'm just solely focusing on like literally one move at a time. Yeah, me being injured right now, I'm like, I gotta figure out something else that's giving me joy, because I am going crazy. I can only Netflix so much. But expressing it at the same time, it's like, I think I'm more focused on feeling it than showing it to everybody, because I'm also just dealing with finding joy every single day. And for me, that's what's important. What's not important to me is showing everybody else my joy. It's me finding joy in the day, because I don't know, I am dealing with a lot of shit, and like being in these areas really isn't helping right now. And especially this year, I just feel like a lot of people are just very angry and just like being very emotional. And sometimes like my presence is enough to just like throw them over the edge, and which is not fair to me, but that's like the reality of it right now. So yeah, I'm just trying to find joy. That, I guess, right now I'm also trying to find joy that's not climbing. Yeah. I need help with that.
A reading. What about you, Brandon? What do you find useful in your climbing or just like in life right now?
Yeah, I agree with Genevieve. I think it's just like the overall silence, which frankly, I think that's why I've been avoiding some crags over the past few years. But yeah, it's just, I live in a pretty big city, and so it's just the ability to get away from just a lot of noise and distraction. I think that was also kind of the nice thing about Colorado in a sense. A, it's just something different, but B, also just kind of just getting away, feeling a little more remote, just get away from the noise. Like I was telling someone, I was doing a shoot over at this place called Mill earlier today, and I was saying, some of the best days of climbing that I have, it's just, I might just like on a random Wednesday go to the crag by myself and no one's out there. I might run into like a few other people at the day, and like I just like climb a bunch of moderates and I don't say a single word the entire day. And there's just something really peaceful about that. And it's very refreshing to just escape and there's a certain like, I don't know, just being like really appreciative to just like be able to just even do that. When it comes to Black joy as like resistance, I've always interpreted it as like you were saying, Kathy, just it's a direct contradiction to this like same narrative of just like, oh, like here, like the suffering, the kind of like suffering Negro like narrative, like I don't know, just like you watch news and you just read, you watch the news in like any metropolitan city and all they do is highlight like black on black crime and, a lot of the protests and stuff like that that are going on. I think in order to, I think like to just like have that joy is a form of like protest, and also just to like be outwardly expressive of that joy and just like kind of exist in like certain spaces is like a certain form of protest in some ways. And just like taking up space is a certain form of protest. And taking up space and just like having a good time. You know, especially with some narrative that, you know, you see sometimes, like, you know, the group of a lot of Black people who are in the room and stuff like that, when they're just like, you know, they're just a big group of friends having a good time, and like a group of white people can just be equally as loud, if not louder, and, you know, just, I think just sometimes just like shoving it in people's faces like that is just kind of a form of rebellion, especially in parts of the world that don't really get to see us very often. Or me just like showing up in the middle of this country music concert and 10 Sleep and just like walking across the stage and just like not necessarily caring. Like, I'm hungry, dude. Like, I was trying to go to this restaurant. Like, why am I getting so many eyes and why am I getting so many stares? Like, I don't care. That's your problem to deal with at that point. I'm just trying to go get some food and be on my way. And, you know, just a form of protest is like an interesting way to put it. I just kind of see it as like a form of just like blatantly, just not even blatant because I'm just living my life in a sense, but I guess to them it feels kind of blatant. But I don't know, just like, I'm out here and I'm gonna be out here next year and the year after that, and so just like get used to it, because I'm probably gonna bring a couple of my buddies too, who, you know, one dude's from like Venezuela and like another dude's like Black, like me, from Atlanta or something like that, and just, yeah, just get over it, get used to it, because this is like, it's only gonna just get worse for you. So, yeah.
I mean, we deserve to, I mean, everybody has the right to be in all these spaces, right? So we shouldn't second guess our decision to do that. Like, I feel like we need to take up these spaces more and more every single day if we're going to see progress or change being made, you know, like we have to. I mean, that's it. And it's gonna be hard. I mean, I don't think change is easy, no matter what. And it's gonna be a lot of work, but we're like part of that work, you know, like yeah.
I think I described change today actually as doing one thing differently one time and then doing it again and again and again until you see the thing that you're moving towards come to be, happen. So and just, speaking on change, I feel like right now we are all really starting to understand with more depth just how important it is to see, not just people of color, not just Black people, just like diversity across the board, right? Like people who are larger, people who are disabled, and so we're seeing the importance of this diversity being represented, being outdoors, climbing, taking up that space, like you said, and I think it's like the ripple effect of seeing someone who looks like you taking up that space in these sports and these activities. Like, it's really life-changing for a lot of people. Like you said, Genevieve, when you weren't used to seeing people who look like you, who had the same hair, the same skin color as you, or the same disability or whatever. And so, on the flip side of that, sometimes I hear a lot of people resist that and they push back, and I hear like, well, that isn't my experience, and I have lots of diversity at my crag. Like, there's definitely resistance still, for sure. How do we keep pushing the message out to more people in the community about the representation, that it really matters, the importance of it? Like,
I mean, I don't think we can be silent. We have to keep speaking up and keep taking up these spaces. I mean, I feel like that's how change happens, right? Unless if people stopped pushing, change would never happen. I mean, even think about like women having the right to vote, or like Black people having the right to vote. It's not like that was always a thing, right? Like, people had to push for that to happen. So I feel like, yeah, we just gotta, I want to see more brands showing more representation, but like not just this year, like continuing it, but not just representation either. Like, I want to see more people have work in the industry, like get paid for their shit in the industry, not just right now while it's a trend, but like 10 years down the road. And not just for like these projects that are like focused around like DEI issues. Like, why can't you hire Black or brown people for like any job? Why does it have to be about diversity within the industry, you know? Like, that's what I want to see more of. Like, cool, I have more to give to these brands and have more to the table than just the color of my skin, is how I look at it. You know, like, I have other skills, or my friends have other skills. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think bringing the conversation is really and I think personally, like, one way to just like keep pushing that message out there that like this kind of representation is really important and it matters is, like you said, just showing up. I mean, literally just somebody continuing to go climbing, to go to the crag. I mean, you know, they don't necessarily have to use a social media platform or anything like that, but just like physically being there in that space is just like proof, you know. I think that's really important. But no, I also want to, you know, I just wanted to ask you both, like, what are some organizations that you see helping to amplify BIPOC experience right now? Like, what are some companies that you see, or some examples of companies, I guess, like, of people doing it right? Like, what organizations, nonprofits?
I mean, for me, the big one that kind of really got me more like psyched on the community as a whole was like Brown Girls Climb. Like, when I first moved out west, I still like, I trying to think, like, I maybe knew like 1, 2 other like Black people that climbed, and that was like me climbing after like 6 years. I only knew 2 people. Like, and after moving out west and like kind of getting connected with that organization and going to like meetups and just like meeting other people and connecting to people like through social media and stuff, like it's helped me. I mean, I got to go to Color Crag, which was a huge moment in my life. Like, I've never had so many joyous tears. I literally cried of joy for like 3 days straight. I've never had that happen. I finally, for the first time, felt comfortable being myself fully. And it even brought out things in me that I didn't even know existed, in a way. You know, like, when you can really 100% be yourself, you learn a lot about yourself. So to have that was huge. And I like really thank them for that.
That's amazing. People can have that same experience in this year and years to come.
Yeah, that's where I met Brandon. Color Crag. Yep.
I met a ton of people. A ton of people at Color Crag. I have like a small network of folks who like I try to stay in contact with pretty regularly because of that experience, and it was definitely life-changing in a lot of ways, and got me really just more amped into like the community, that's for sure. And it's something that I look forward to like every single year. It's literally pretty much the only climbing festival I go to every year. Like, I don't go to outdoor comps, I don't go to climbing festivals. Like, no, that sounds like a nightmare to me. It's just like hang out with a bunch of climbers, like, fuck no. So
that's worse.
Oh yeah, No Man's Land Festival, that's another great one. But as far as organizations, like, yeah, definitely Brown Ones Climb. They have done such an amazing just job as far as like getting these meetups together and getting like groups of people to like form their own like little sub communities and stuff like that. And they're just doing them like all over the United States. And even during like COVID times, like, they're still, you know, they're trying to just do it. They seem to be going strong than ever. So I guess they give them props. And Memphis Rocks Gym over in Memphis, Tennessee. I had the privilege to talk with John Hawk earlier this week, or was it last week? Oh man, my days are mixing up. I think it was like sometime last week. And you know, not only are they, you know, in a portion of the city that's like it's like one of the roughest cities in the United States right now. You know, they're also giving a lot of people opportunities to just be employed, you know, even if it is just like working at the, you know, you're working at the cafe, making smoothies and stuff, or, you know, working at the front desk, or you're like slowly getting like certified to become like a lead instructor or like a bouldering instructor, stuff like that. Like they're giving these people like, or these folks like opportunities to just get some level of like steady income, life experience, professional experience, but also just like some level of normalcy in their lives. Because like just hearing some of the stories that John was telling me, just about what happened to people in the past 2 months, someone's mother getting shot or someone's house burned down, just like stuff that's like a relatively normal occurrence for some of these folks in the kind of like the close proximity of like the neighborhood and like gym. You know, just to have like a steady paycheck and like have some feeling of professional growth and development is like huge for people, especially when a lot of things around them are kind of crumbling, like, and just really just going in like a bad way. So like those are like the two organizations I can think of who I think are really like they not only have like a mission statement, but they're like on the ground and they're like running right now. And I would like to see more of that from a lot of other companies. Like right now, it feels like a lot of these, especially big brands, it feels like a lot of these brands are just like, okay, we have a mission statement, we did a black square on our Instagram page, like we care. And they're kind of going like the typical tradition, like they're going like this like typical capitalist way of doing it, where it's just like, we're just gonna throw a fuckload of money at stuff. And it's like, cool, that's great. And that like, that bridges the gap to some degree, but like money is not necessarily gonna solve everything that's going on. And I think like, or at least if you're gonna be throwing money, like not, just don't give people gear, like, you know, give people like opportunities that are gonna like change their lives. You know, and I think more companies could be doing more just like professional development, something that's just like got some longevity to it. I did like Elle's giveaway with, I can't remember the companies that she was, I can't remember the media company that she partnered with, but you know, you give someone like $4,000 worth of camera equipment, like people who are definitely interested in doing like outdoor media, whether it be photography or videography or what have you, and they have like the talent and the drive to do it, but they can't drop $6,000 on a brand new SLR and like two lenses and all this other stuff. And so like, you know, you give them the opportunity to just like build their professional portfolio to some degree, and like you change someone's life doing that, doing it that way. I just wish there were more companies that could do that. And I understand 2020 is a hard year, no one's making any money, but yeah, it would just be nice than just like just throwing a bunch of money at just something, or like giving out a bunch of just like random like gear or something like that. Yeah, just give people something that they can hold on to and build off of themselves.
Even going back to like the representation thing, like, you know, companies are trying to do more like shoots and trying to display more diversity within their brand that way, but it's like behind the scenes it's still a whole white crew. Like that would be a great opportunity for you to hire, you know, within that community and give somebody the opportunity to show their skills, you know, and then possibly get more work from that. I think that's also something to keep in mind. So I know I've experienced that with a few shoots where it's like, oh, you know, like we want to show more representation. It's like, that's great, but
right. I mean, you can only give it time, but like giving people, yeah, just like the, you know, the autonomy here. And like, I mean, they're really skilled people out there, and we should be seeing more opportunities, more grants and that sort of thing. Yeah, I 1,000% agree.
you know, it's like, or even like writers, like you're having writers write articles about diversity or whatever, but what about just a regular article? Like, you know, like it doesn't have to be about a race thing. It can just be like another one of your articles, you know, like, I don't know, expand out, you know, like don't just hire from within your small group. Like this is your opportunity to like expand your employment.
Yeah. It turns out Black people can talk about other things outside of diversity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Guys, I just checked. We actually have no questions at the moment, so I just wanted to ask you before we sign off: Are there any parting words that you'd like to leave with us tonight?
I don't know. Like I said, I want to keep continuing these conversations. I think it's really, really important. It's only like a small stepping stone, but I think if we can spread awareness, that'll be a great way to make some kind of change within or progress within this community. And yeah, just freaking pay us for our work. You know, people, this is like this year especially, I feel like companies and brands and stuff are like reaching out and trying to like get our views on things or get us to work for gear, like you said, but like, you know, pay us. Gear doesn't pay our bills. It's the truth. It's the truth. You know, like, yeah. I'll stop ranting.
I think the only thing that really immediately comes to my mind is, yeah, I guess I'm gonna go on this mini rant. I would say, ever since the summer, like I've definitely seen Black and brown voices being elevated to a degree that I've never thought I would ever see. However, it's predominantly men who are getting like a lot more publicity and a lot more of like we're just controlling a lot of the narrative. And I guess I just want to say, like, elevate women of color. More women of color just need to be in these like panels and discussions and stuff like that, and like elevate different voices. Like, it's not, don't just do like this, like the same 10 people. Like, definitely reach out, and you know, they don't have to be like influencers and whatnot and have a bunch of followers. Just like get different perspectives and just like elevate different voices and elevate women of color, especially Black women, because yeah, it's mostly just been men's voices that have been dominating the narrative. And I know that's something that me and another friend talking about on the phone a couple of times, just being like, we have this platform now, and our platforms have been elevated to this degree that we've never even thought would even happen. And so it's like, how do we end up elevating more Black women with our kind of status, I guess. So that's something that I've just been kind of like thinking on recently and trying to figure out. But I'm just saying to any brands listening out there, elevate women of color, elevate Black women's voices. That's it.
As a woman, I just yeah, thank you so much for emphasizing that. Genevieve, I think that your rants are perfect. And on behalf of myself and Gnarly Nutrition and everybody who participated here tonight, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. And I believe that it'll be available if you missed it or you want to watch it again. So check back at the Gnarly Nutrition Instagram, and thanks everybody for coming.
Oh, hey, wait, I think, oh, there are questions now.
Oh, now there are questions.
There are 3.
Cool. I don't need to eat dinner. It's fine. Okay. How do you recruit people of color to climb?
Oh, see, that's hard because like when we're going back to like accessibility and things like that, like gyms are really expensive. Like $20 for a day pass, that's ridiculous. And I feel like sometimes it's easier to get somebody, is that what they're talking about? Like that way, like new people or just like friends in general? So I'm thinking about like new people who've never climbed and want to experience it for the first time. I feel like the gym would be like a great way to kind of first dip your toes into it. But I don't even have $20 to spend on a day pass. Like, you know, so it's like even just making it more financially accessible, I think would be a great way to be able to allow other people into the community. I know people do guest passes, but I know at the gym that I go to, you're only allowed to give, your guest pass only works for a new person every month. So you can't even bring the same person every month, which I think is kind of crap. Like, I don't understand that at all. Which really sucks, because I would love to bring some people, I'd love to bring them every single month. Yeah, that's just what I have off the top of my head.
How do you deal with people who are your friends that are white, hear racist comments about their friend of color, and they don't say anything?
It's not like friends to me.
Yeah.
If I'm just being straight up. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that doesn't sound like anyone I'd really want to be affiliated with. If someone's not willing to like defend you or something like that, especially if someone's saying something racist, I'm not even sure if I could really be, I'm not really sure if I could really be anything beyond like associates with that person. That's just like kind of a hot take, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I'd probably end up just like kind of like calling them out on the BS and just like kind of just keep it very cordial from there. That's just kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that every person can kind of assess that situation too. If it's somebody that you feel like, is a close friend and you do have this prior relationship to, I mean, if you feel like it's safe to have an open conversation, and you're in a good mindset to do it, I think that it's definitely worth assessing the situation. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it's like, it would be really hard to pour that energy and time into, a quote unquote friend who very clearly isn't going to be a part of your support system. Like you all, and we all deserve support systems much better than that. So
yeah, I would like try to give them the benefit of the doubt at first for a split second and ask them like, hey, were you aware that this was like not cool? And if they weren't and they want to try to like change their ways for the next, like in the future, okay, I might give them a second go. But if they were aware and they were just too nervous or whatever to say anything, like fuck them. Like, not worth my time. Like, if you're my friend, you're gonna stand up for me, because I would do the same. If for my true friends, like I will stand up for them 100%. And you need to do the same for me.
Last question is, how can you find groups to climb with that are people of color? I think that one of the things we had talked about was events like Color the Crag, which I know isn't happening this year, but are there any other channels that you two would recommend for as far as finding people of color to go climbing with?
Honestly, I would say social media. It wasn't until like Brown Girls Climb and like Brothers of Climbing that came out, like, that I realized that there was like this weird network of people of color who were climbing. And so like, it just blew my mind that like, there were just like 500 other black dudes or black people who are climbing out in the United States. And so I would say, getting like to follow these people, maybe like trying to build some sort of network with these individuals, and then, just blast something out on your story or something like that if people are around the area. And like, maybe you can drive up and meet up with them like for like a long weekend or something like that. But yeah, I would just like, I would say social media for sure. Just like figure out where the nearby community is and then see if people are willing to kind of make a trip or something.
And meetups, I feel like I know right now with COVID, maybe not so much, but even then they do like virtual meetups. But there's usually like a lot of meetups going on where you can find other people in your area to climb with, which was super helpful for me and was a good resource when I was trying to just like make other friends in my area. That was huge.
Okay, last question. Do you think there's a place for white climbers to provide mentorship for BIPOC climbers? And what would you prefer to see white climbers doing to keep BIPOC climbers coming back to the gym, crag, etc.? Thank you, Elena.
Coming back to the gym. Maybe for me as a guide, I was just thinking of one thing. Maybe hiring more like BIPOC guides in your company to then maybe like get more climbers to come out and give it a shot. I think that could maybe be one avenue as like a way to like support, as a way. Maybe not mentorship, but just another way to support people in these like having these like leadership positions. Yeah.
In regards to like the latter question, let's see what climbers do. In regards to that second question, I would say, and just like beyond like white climbers, I think just climbers in general, because like you're walking, especially when you walk into a gym, like it's a very intimidating like area. People are like high off the ground, like cutting feet and all this stuff, and everyone's like super like fit and all and whatnot. I think I think you have I think we as a community as a whole have to be more mindful of how we are presenting ourselves, especially to newer people, and also just being like a bit more welcoming. Um, yeah, just being a bit more welcoming. And like I'm not saying you have to say hi to everyone at the gym, but like I think I think there's this perception of climbers being kind of like elitist in a sense, especially depending on the gym that you're going to. I've had plenty of my friends who stepped into the gym the first time and they were just like immediately intimidated and didn't come back because they just felt like they didn't belong. Yeah, they either got stares or looks or just kind of felt this certain like vibe or energy. And so I think just like maybe it just comes down to how we're presenting ourselves as a community. Maybe just trying to be like a bit more welcoming.
Yeah. Be more supportive. Don't mansplain, or maybe just like send something that somebody's trying. Like don't walk up and just like on-site something that somebody's working. I hate when guys do that. I'm like working something at the gym and someone will just come up and just be like, "Fish." Like ask if somebody wants help with the problem there or wants to like learn a little bit of technique instead of just automatically like giving them your advice, your unsolicited advice. Like Brendan was saying, making it feel more comfortable.
And just to touch on the first part of that question too, like asking if there's a place for climbers who are white to provide mentorship to BIPOC climbers. I just want to point out that like intention counts for so much. And so if the intention is to provide mentorship and it's coming from a good place versus like, oh, I feel guilty, I feel like I should be doing this, I don't know, and I think like if you are somebody who's considering mentorship or this has kind of come up for you, like yeah, just ask yourself honestly, like, what is my intention here? Is it because I want to foster more of a community and I want to be a part of that community? I want, and I want to help like spearhead it and like, and see this thrive and grow. Then like, yeah, like there's absolutely a space for that. Like it's not, what is it? White saviorism, I guess is like the term, intention counts for so much. So I just, I think climbing as a whole, like the mentorship gap needs so much bridging still. And I mean, I would never want to see something like this miss out on an opportunity because people were afraid to. But yeah, that's all the questions we have tonight. Thank you so much, everybody, again, for coming on behalf of myself and Gnarly Nutrition and Brandon and Genevieve. It was so good to see your faces. I will see them soon again. Yeah, thank you. And Pickle.
That's Oliver.
Y'all.
See y'all.
Meow meow.